Join us as we go exploring the world of Pokemon. Today's story, the Flame of Legends. As many of the Sinnoh region's endemic Pokemon have disappeared, to find today's topic of discussion, we must first venture to the land where many believe the beginning of Pokemon research started, this being the Kanto region. A land ventured by many and loved by others. We scan the vast pastures and fields where we find an icon of the Kanto region. Among the 150 first Pokemon in this Pokedex, we find Growlithe. Loyal, dependable, and fierce, this fire canine has spent so long in tandem with mankind that it has even been found fossilized among humans. As one of its many dex entries reads, it has lived alongside humans since ages ago. Its bones have been found in excavations of ruins from the Stone Age. With that knowledge, it is not surprising that Growlithe is the premier partner for law enforcement across many regions, as many officers create amazing bonds with this loyal, dependable fire dog. With Growlithe in numerous numbers across various regions, many couldn't think of what could make this fire dog any better, and many believe that Growlithe is arguably one of the most perfect of the fire canine species. Now imagine the shock, surprise, and giddy joy when researchers looked through the dated Pokedex and found a familiar looking dog. As the researchers traced the Hisuian map, they would find their way to the area known as the Cobalt Coastlands, where Hisuian Growlithe lived. From the first look of both, obvious have similarities here, as from the striking red to the vivid stripes that the dogs create, you could definitely say these two must either be related or at least cut very much the same. But the differences are very apparent, as the dex entry for Hisuian Growlithe reads as follows. They patrol their territory in pairs. I believe the igneous rock components in the fur of this species are the result of volcanic activity in its habitat. With the main population located being marked in the Windbreak Stand and Veilstone Cape, the proximity to the active Firespit Island may have been a leading contributor in this species' alteration, with various depictions of this fluffy fire dog roaming the coastlands, bringing a smile to many. Even with the researchers diving into this Pokemon and looking at the research that is available, the question remained, what was the purpose of this form? And what does this mean for its evolution? One cannot speak about Growlithe without speaking about the legendary Pokemon Arcanine. This Firestone evolution of Growlithe has been the topic of many majestic stories and tales. As one of the many dex entries reads as follows, there are so many old tales about them that they're called legendary Pokemon, but there are way more of them than you'd expect. With the grace and power of Arcanine known across the world, researchers hoped with the discovery of Hisuian Growlithe that they would be rewarded, and they were with the discovery of Hisuian Arcanine. As we were to look at both Arcanines, they are striking, but the differences between them are very apparent, as Hisuian Arcanine clearly resembles something a bit different. With its dex entry reading, it snaps at its foes with fangs cloaked in blazing flame. Despite its bulk, it deftly feints every which way, leading opponents on a deceptively merry chase as it all but dances around them. With the vibrant, flowing fur and fearsome appearance, Hisuian Arcanine was more than just a stunning Pokemon. As even more to add to the legendary status, it in Hisui was one of the 5 noble Pokemon, as a Hisuian Arcanine had descended from the legendary Heroes Pokemon and was regarded by both clans of the Hisui region at the time. With its presence being massive, Hisuian Arcanine was definitively called the King of Firespit Island. With this knowledge apart, the researchers had a lot of information, as many believed they could offer an answer to explain why the species had their unique niches and appearance. To understand the secret behind this magnificent species, we must take a closer look at the power source, this being Fire Spit Island. With many fire Pokemon making their home on the active volcano, this was a prime place to find fire types, and it was the home of Hisuian Arcanine. With the lack of Hisuian Growlithe on the island, it is hypothesized that Hisuian Arcanine laid its eggs on the mainland, where it must have been safer for the young Growlithe, as it was believed that the young lived on the Cape to avoid the many water types, and it is believed that this may be where the igneous rocks were added into their diet and or added into their fur, as potentially this allowing them to gain two distinct advantages. First, a longer coat, and secondly, the addition of the rock typing. This was hypothesized to be more useful in the harsher climates of Hisui. It is unknown if the Cantonian counterparts acclimated into this form, or another species or another lineage of Growlithe had evolved into what would become the Hisuian Growlithe. And many researchers have hypothesized that they had appeared here. As with the presence of so many Cantonian Pokemon on Fire Spit Island, it is theorized that both Growlithe and Arcanine once appeared here in their Cantonian forms. And in order to be more acclimated to the region, the Pokemon began to incorporate the magma into their bodies, and over time the Hisuian forms were born. This is just a hypothesis, as more research is needed, and as it is believed that by incorporating the rocks into the body, Hisuian Arcanine sacrificed some of its speed, but was rewarded with more power. As it has been speculated and even written in some depictions that when it used its fire to defeat some of the many Pokemon of the region, it was proven to be ineffective, such as against dragon types. But when this situation was proven, it still required enough of its speed, as it did not sacrifice enough of it and was able to dance around foes. And then, when the fire was unusable, it could utilize the power of its rock attacks to cover its weaknesses. And with this knowledge being known, it has been hypothesized that Hisuian Arcanine was a super predator of its territory, as it would take down Pokemon that it could catch, but also effectively escape if needed. As there are many water types in the area, this would mean that Hisuian Arcanine would have been at a disadvantage, but used its speed as well as its overwhelming power to overwhelm foes it could catch and run from those that it could not. And with this, it was clear that its dominance must have been felt across the Cobalt coastlands, as it was always known to many as the Lord of the Isles. With this knowledge being shown, it is hard to believe that Hisuian Arcanine had any equal and or any specific threat in its range. But a question did arise from all of this studying and research, as how and where did such a mighty creature go? And what could on earth have led to its disappearance? As of course, as you know, we always had to ask, what led to the decline? Hey guys, this is obviously the part of the video where I ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. So please do that for me. It does help out. And of course, that's all I wanted to say. So let's get back to the action. With Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine both vanishing in Sinnoh, researchers attempted to find why it had disappeared at all. As a hypothesis was finally laid out, it was believed that as long as Fire Spit Island remained, this Pokemon would reign supreme. But that's just it. Researchers have been unable to find the area known as Fire Spit Island, and at the time of recording, it still seems to be a mystery. With the search on, we can only speculate, as many believe that Fire Spit Island would be the location of where the Pokemon League currently sits in Sinnoh. However, some argue that Fire Spit Island actually has sunken into the ocean, as this also could be a hypothesis, as the areas of and ratios of the maps of Hisui to Sinnoh have changed over time, with water levels changing in certain areas and some areas of the region becoming uncovered and covered by more water. This is left to more further development and research, as we do not have a current answer. But this does not change the fact that with either the island gone or the volcano ceasing its activity, this means the species were unable to utilize the most powerful item that the island gave. One, the source of fire, but two, the rocks that it had spewed. As we have spoken before about the Pokemon Kleavor, this is a similar situation, where with the disappearance and inactivity of the materials that were used in the form of the rocks that may have been deposited from Firespit Island and had been collected on the ground, there was a limited supply now of what the Pokemon could use, as Hisuian Arcanine had unfortunately not realized that the youth would eventually eat up the remaining rocks or use the remaining rocks into their forms, as the fewer number of Hisuian Growlithe to Hisuian Arcanine became an apparent sight in the region. As well as this situation, with the climate altering altogether towards the end of the last glacial maximum period of Hisui, we realize that a lot of the terrain was changing. As we look at Hisuian Arcanine, a lot of its body was designed to adapt to the harsh climate. This also meant that when the climate would be rearranged, these advantages may have become downsides altogether. As we're to look around and speculate, Hisuian Arcanine's new heavy coat, which was designed to allow it to interact in the colder areas of the region and survive the harsher climates to deal with certain Pokemon. Many of these Pokemon actually began to disappear, and the climate altered as a lot of the snow that Hisuian Arcanine could have trekked in was replaced with grasslands, very similar to the areas that we find normal Arcanine and Growlithe in the modern day. As unfortunately, Hisuian Arcanine was left in the dust by the changing climate. A species that it would normally have preyed on also began to dwindle in numbers as the region's configuration really did cause problems. As unfortunately, Arcanine and Growlithe in their Hisuian forms would be a part of the casualties of the Hisuian mass special disappearance, which did take place. As, of course, we noticed this with being the Hisuian Pokemon and their forms disappearing from the Sinnoh region as a whole, as many of them that once appeared in their areas and locations across Hisui do not appear in modern Sinnoh. And as always, as tying back to some of our last entries, this is also possibly linked with Hisuian flight, which, if you do not know, is the possibility that these Pokemon migrated out of the region as the regions changed. But besides the factors of them disappearing in their home range, all hope is not lost. As across the world, and as recent in the Paldea region, these regional variants have been identified and seen. It is unknown currently where the species is living, but we do know that it still exists alongside us, as a prominent photographer that we cannot name at the moment has been seen with the Hisuian Growlithe, and a trainer and trainers across the globe have actually been using Hisuian Growlithe and Hisuian Arcanine in battle, as this Pokemon's prowess has not seemed to dim in any of the past years. And in the modern day, we still can see the power of the Lord of the Isles roaming alongside us. As we move on and look at the coastland that once existed, the sun sets, as unfortunately the Lord of the Isles' call is no longer heard and is desperately missed in Sinnoh. But thanks to the researchers and the scientists that have been looking into it, we have a better understanding of this legendary Pokemon. And hopefully one day, we will find it in large numbers once again, and hopefully reigning over another isle. This has been the Flame of Legends. And as always, this is Brad from the Ad Army signing off, and for all of you out there, to sign on.